This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
From a U.S. Amateur Championship to winning the US Open, it's been quite a career. Professional golfer Jerry Pate on this edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for deciding to spend some time with us. We are absolutely pleased to have professional golfer Jerry Pate with us on this edition of Conversations. Thanks for joining us, Jerry.
Thanks, Jeff.
Everybody knows you as a golfer, and I want to get to some of the things that you've accomplished in your career. But before we do, take me back. What was it that first got Jerry Pate interested in golf?
Oh, my goodness. My grandfather was a good golfer. He was a scratch golfer and grew up in South Georgia. And my dad was born in Jacksonville, Florida, was an only child. And he was a scratch player, a good golfer. And he played golf in college and played some really good golf throughout his career. Other than having 6 kids, which he had to work for the middle part of his life, but he played a lot of good golf early on and then later on in his life.
So just kind of a family thing.
Yeah, everybody in our family played golf. We grew up in a little small town in Anniston, Alabama, after I was born in Macon, Georgia. And in the summertime, we'd ride down and play golf at the local country club. And my grandfather was one of the original members at San Jose Club in Jacksonville, and early on in about 1934, a member of Ponte Vedra. And these were 2 old famous golf courses in Jacksonville. And we'd go down and visit in the summer and play golf with my dad. And it was a good way that I could spend time with my dad, because my dad was an avid golfer, so was my grandfather. And so I spent a lot of time with them on the golf course.
At which point did you realize that, hey, maybe I'm a little better than the average guy out here? Maybe I can do something, serious with this?
Yeah, well, it wasn't early in my career. In fact, I played junior golf and played through college and was a very average golfer when I first went to the University of Alabama. But it was probably after the end of my second year of college or third year of college. After my junior year of college, I was asked to play in the Florida Amateur, and it was the first time I'd played in a state event, and went down and won it. And so I decided to try to qualify for the US Amateur, went to Jacksonville, ironically at San Jose Club, where my granddad was one of the founders, and I was medalist. So I went to New Jersey to the US Amateur in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and ended up winning there. So I thought, I might be pretty good. So I went back to school and became real close with Coach Bryant at that time, and he kind of helped build my confidence. And I went to the World Amateur that fall, won it, and played about 5 or 6 pro tournaments that spring in my senior year at Alabama, and I made the cut in all of them, and actually came close to winning a couple of them. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I won't be in business. I'll go try to play golf.
Speaking of Coach Bryant, now you had kind of a unique relationship with him, despite the fact you were in golfing and he was in the football. How'd that come about?
Well, he was an avid golfer. He liked to hunt quail, and which I do. My family, I'm about a 4th-generation quail hunter, and I love golf. And when I won the amateur, actually on Saturday, which was the final round of the U.S. Amateur, he sent a telegram, and I received it actually halfway through the match. It was a 36-hole match. I went to my locker at lunchtime, and the locker room attendant said, "You might want to look at this telegram," and it said, "Hope all your putts drop, wishing you well, bring home another national championship for Alabama, Coach Paul Bryant." And after I won, I showed it to the national press there in Ridgewood, New Jersey, which was really New York City, and they sort of ran with it. The caption on the Golf World magazine next week, which was a weekly publication, said, Jerry Pate, U.S. Amateur champion, another national championship for the Bear. So when I got back to school the next day, he called me into his office immediately, and he said, "I want you to eat on the training table. I want you to go to the football game with us in a couple of weeks, or next week, and I want you to come to practice." So I went out to football practice. I'd go up in the tower with Coach Bryant and watch the team. I was intimidated because a lot of these guys were friends of mine, but the football players at Alabama were the studs on campus, and I was just a mere golfer on the golfing team. And so we got to be good friends. And then later on, when I went on the tour, he would come out and play in some of the tournaments. We played together at the Bob Hope. We played at the Danny Thomas Pro-Am, and I can remember he came down to the TPC Championship, Tournament Players Championship in Jacksonville at Sawgrass. So he was, a fan of mine. I was a fan of his, and he was a mentor of mine. And I learned a lot from Coach Bryant.
Once you got on the PGA Tour, what was life like?
Oh, it was really electrifying, but very intense. You know, in those days, you had a top 60 exempt player. And you had to either win a tournament or be in the top 60 on the money list to get in the event, or have some previous history on tour. And I was a rookie, and you'd have to qualify on Mondays, and you'd go out to Monday qualifying, and they might have 15, 20 spots, or they could have 3 or 4 spots to get you in that field, depending on how many players had committed for the event. And it was quite challenging, to say the least. We were driving around the country in a car. We weren't flying on airplanes, and you had everything you owned in the back of the trunk. And if you didn't make it on Monday, you had to sit out about a week to try to qualify the next Monday. If you didn't make it for 2 Mondays, you might not play in a tournament for 3 straight weeks. So, from a competitive point of view, you were always not quite as sharp as the guys that were exempt. And it was frightening even at times. I can remember trying to qualify for the Bob Hope tournament after getting invited to play at Phoenix, and I played in Hawaii. I missed the cut, and I had to go back to LA and then drive down to Palm Springs, and we had 140 guys playing for like 3 spots to get in the tournament. So it was, and I ended up shooting 64, and I got the low spot, and I got in. So qualifying on Monday was really terrifying, to say the least.
Stressful, man.
Yeah, yeah.
What was the first major tournament you won?
Well, the first major tournament I won was US Amateur, 1974. The first major on the PGA Tour that I won was the US Open. I was a rookie, and it was in Atlanta Athletic Club, 1976.
What was life like after that victory?
Well, it changed a lot. In fact, that afternoon, I was scheduled to go to the next tournament, which was in Chicago. I was going to probably get on a plane, fly to Chicago, and I was invited to fly on a private jet up to Amana, Iowa, to play in the Amana VIP tournament, which was a big celebrity bash. It had all the famous celebrities and the top players on the PGA Tour playing a Monday outing for charity there at the Finkbein Golf Course in Iowa. But it changed dramatically. I'll never forget landing, and there was a celebrity show going on. Roy Clark was entertaining, and you had Charlie Pride and Glenn Campbell and all these guys, and I got to know them immediately that night. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting back in a hotel room with Roy Clark and a bunch of his buddies, the Gatlin brothers. We were all playing poker, $100 minimums. I didn't know how to play poker. I mean, I could play gin. I had no idea how to play poker. I could play bridge, I could play hearts, I could play card games, not poker. So after I threw in $400 or $500, Roy Clark said, "Son, you know how to play this game?" I said, "No, sir." I said, "But I just won the US Open." He said, "I like your style." I knew they weren't going to break me in a $100 poker game. So we became friends immediately, and Roy ultimately came to Pensacola, I think about 11 straight years, and came down here and entertained people for the Pensacola Open, which was quite a gift for our community.
So once you reached a certain level of fame, you were known kind of as a personality on the tour. You jumping in the lake and the orange ball and the whole 9 yards. How did the whole jumping in the lake thing come about?
Well, that was really a crazy story. I was at the Memphis Open 1981 having dinner at Curtis Person's home. He was a famous amateur golfer, and a lot of the pros were over there. And his wife came up to me and said, "You know, Jerry," she said, "you ought to win the tournament this week. You're playing well, and you've had a lot of great success, but you hadn't won in a couple of years." And I said, "You know, I'm going to win." She said, "You think so?" I said, "Yeah, I feel confident." And I was just teasing her. I said, "In fact, when I win tomorrow, I'm going to jump in the lake on the 18th hole." And so she went and told Curtis, and the next morning, on Saturday morning, he went and told the announcers at CBS. They were doing the telecast, and Vern Lindquist was there, and Frank Gleaver was the guy, and he's dead now. He was from Dallas, I believe, and I think I birdied like the 15th hole, and he went in, "With that putt, Jerry Pate vows to jump in the lake should he win tomorrow." Okay, I didn't hear that. I'm on the golf course, so I birdie a couple of more holes, and I come in, and I've got a 1-shot lead. I walk in the press room, and there's all these guys there, and they said, "Well, you going to jump in tomorrow?" I said, "What? You're going to jump in the lake tomorrow if you win?" And I said, "Who said that?" They said, "Well, Curtis Persons." No, they didn't say Curtis. They said, "Frank Gleaver said it today on the telecast at CBS." And I said, and Curtis was in the press room, and Curtis said, "Yeah, Jerry, you know that southern drawl." He said, "You told Helen and you were going to jump in the lake." I said, "Well, if they say I'm going to jump in, I'll jump in." So I get to the range about noon on Sunday morning, and there's like 500-600 people down in this range, and it was so hot in Memphis. It was like a hole in the ground, this range at the Colonial Country Club. And they were waiting to see me warm up, and no one ever went down to the range to watch you warm up in those days. And they were going, "Oh, we want to see you jump in." They already had their beers going, and so I played with Peter Jackson and Tom Kite, and I played the golf course and played well. Came to the last hole, made birdie, handed my hat, my putter to my caddy. I think my hat came off, and I dove in, and the rest was history. And CBS was doing the telecast. In fact, Summerall and Ken Venturi were talking about it, and I think they said they were going to go down and throw me in the lake if I didn't jump in the lake because I had bragged that I was going to jump in. So it was a lot of fun, and the only guy that really didn't like it, I don't think, was Tom Kite, because I had his scorecard and it was in my back pocket. And it was, needless to say, ruined, and they had to refill out Jack Tuthill was the official there in Pensacola, and he had to refill the scorecard out so Kite could sign his scorecard.
That kind of became a signature thing for you. Where'd the whole orange ball come from? How'd that come about?
In fact, I won that tournament with the orange ball. Wilson Sporting Goods, who I represented for a long time, maybe 18 years, they decided they wanted to do a little marketing campaign and bring out orange balls. And up to that point, I think they made colored balls for people in the winter up north to hit balls in the snow. And, of course, we don't get snow anymore due to global warming.
Right.
That's a joke. But anyway, it snows like crazy still here in the U.S. We just had a few years where it didn't. But so I started using the orange ball. Wilson said, "You want to use it?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "We're going to pay you handsomely if it takes." And it did. And I was the guy that was known for the orange balls. And of course, then the jump in the lake carried over the next year. We're playing the diabolical stadium golf course at the PGA Tour headquarters, and Pete Dye and Dean Beeman had built this golf course that was really difficult, and no one thought they could play it, and people were mad. The great players in the game were all mad because we shouldn't be in the golf business of building and owning golf courses. We should just sanction events. And if you look back at the history, you had Nicklaus, Palmer, Floyd, Trevino, Crenshaw, Kite, Irwin, you name it, Johnny Miller, all these guys missed the cut, and it was kind of left down to the end. Bruce Litsky and myself and Scott Simpson and a couple other guys were the only players that really had won some events that had made the cut. And so we came to the final day, and then I birdied 17, the little 3-par, and then I hit a 5-iron about that close with the orange ball in on 18. And I saw the commissioner, and he was sweating bullets because the talk was that Dean Beeman was going to get fired for building this course, and that we didn't want to play it. Well, it was the greatest thing the tour had ever done when you look back, was to build golf courses, own golf courses, and get into the business of promoting the game from ground roots up. So I looked at Dean, I looked at Pete Dye, and I said, "Come over here, I want to show you something." And I threw him in the lake, and then I dove in behind him, and the rest was history. But it was a lot of fun. That was sort of my trademark. And ironically, and really tragically, you would never know, in May, about 2 months later, I ended up tearing my shoulder right here in Pensacola, hitting golf balls, and didn't play much on the PGA Tour after that.
Take me through that, because you're back playing some now on the Champions Tour.
Playing well. I just, not scoring as well, but enjoying it and feel great. Well, I was. It was in the middle of May, and I decided I was going to do some work at Perdido Bay Country Club to help improve that golf course. I'd given some money to the calls, and so had Pensacola Sports Association, and I was physically out there with a crew of workmen that were consultants that came in, and we were running machinery and trying to rebuild the driving range and the practice tees to make it a little better place. I was proud of Pensacola and proud of what I'd accomplished, and I wanted to bring really the best players in the world and a lot of big-time golf supporters and enthusiasts to come see our event, because we had one of the oldest events in golf. It was started in 1925. Only the Western Open and the US Open were older events still played on the PGA Tour. So I spent some time out there for a week or so, and I decided one afternoon I'd go on the back end of the range. It was real hard ground. I was going to hit some low 1-irons, and Trevino said nobody can hit a 1-iron. That's a joke. And I was practicing. I wanted to do well at Troon for the British Open coming up. I was leading money on the tour at that time. I just won the Players' Championship, finished second at Darrel. I think I'd finished second at Colonial in Fort Worth. I got beat a shot at the Masters. This was in 1982. And so I was leading the money and thinking, boy, I finally got to my prime. I was 28 years old. Although I'd already won 8 tournaments, I'd already had a heck of a start. But
Right.
who would have known that would have been my last hurrah? And hitting one shot, and boom, I felt something pop in my shoulder, and I tore my cartilage. And I didn't really know what to do about it. You know, doctors couldn't see torn cartilage. We didn't have CT scans and MRIs that could look at your joint the way you can today. And went to Jim. I knew Jim Andrews, talked to him in '82 and '83, and finally in '84, I played a little bit, struggled. I would in and out of events, and finally in 1985, he said, well, let me scope your shoulder and let's take a look. And in those days, if you had a torn labrum, which is your cartilage, they would go in. If it was torn, they would kind of trim up the looseness and the stuff that was hanging and floating in your joint because it was impinging against your humeral head. And what happened is when they cut the cartilage out, it just made my joint looser. Today, they go in and they staple it back down, or they anchor it. They drill in the bone and they suture the cartilage back down, which keeps that tightness in your joint. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, what he did to me, if I was a normal person, it wouldn't have bothered me, but all the stress of your left shoulder joint rotating through the golf swing ended up just becoming inflamed and was worse and worse. And so then I tore my rotator cuff shortly after that. I had surgery in '86 for my rotator cuff, and then I tore it again. And then I went to Frank Jobe in LA in '87. He tried to do a total reconstruction of my joint and did an open procedure, which I was out of playing golf for over a year. And it just didn't work. And so I decided in 1988, I went to work for ABC doing television. I decided that I wasn't going to be able to compete anymore, and that was the end of my career.
But you're back at it now. What's changed? Dr. Andrews, I guess, did some
Well,
more
they
work
have
on you,
some
or?
new procedures, and they have a lot better rehabilitation workouts to get you to the point where you can play. I had surgery again in 2003. I went back to Jim in Birmingham, and I said, Jim, I want you to see if you can do anything to fix my shoulder because I want to try to play the senior tour this year. And he said, well, you're going to be out for this year, but you can start in 2004. So he said, we have something called a thermal capsular shrinkage where we go in and we put heat inside your joint. We'll melt the ligaments and heat them to or shrink them by heating them to 350 degrees. He said it could work for a short period. You might have 1 or 2 years of success with it. He said, but we're not sure that it's going to work. Well, it worked, and I stayed in Birmingham for 5 months, rehabbed every day for about 4 to 5 days a week with Kevin Wilk, who is his therapist, with a really regimented, strenuous rehab program. Got my shoulder and my whole body very strong, and went out in 2004 and played and had a good time. Should have won a couple times in 2004, and then 2005 I won in Tampa at the Outback. Shortly after that, I tore my right shoulder. Had a torn cartilage, so I went in because I learned how to hit it so much on my right side to alleviate the stress of my left shoulder joint. I ended up tearing my right shoulder in 2006, so I went in and Jim repaired my right shoulder, did what they do today, and within 6 months I was fine. I haven't had any problem with it, so it's amazing. If they would have known today, or known back in '82 what they know today, then history would have been a little different probably with my career. The great thing is when people like me that continually want to strive to become better and don't give up, I was willing to have those surgeries, and it helped train people like Jim Andrews and other people in sports medicine to learn from previous types of surgeries that they sometimes those procedures don't work and they move to a different procedure. And in fact, I ended up tearing my knee in 2008, and I had surgery on it, and I tore my shoulder again in my left shoulder. So I had my knee and my left shoulder done simultaneously on the same day in 2008. And with the rehab with Kevin Wilk, I recovered immediately. So
Sure, you're playing golf or football out
yeah,
there?
times have changed in that business, and the technology and the experience and the training and the willingness of people to take risk have allowed people to have better health care and to recover from injury. So I'm blessed I was able to be friends of Jim and Kevin Wilk and become well enough and healthy enough to go back and pursue my passion, playing golf.
That's great. Speaking of the game of golf, from the time you started till now, what's the biggest change you've seen?
Well, technology in golf course conditioning and golf course toughness. And we'll start with golf course toughness. We've had a lot of golf courses built. Golf courses are longer and more difficult. The strategies of the hazards, the bunkers, the water hazards, the the areas in the rough, whether today you could play a golf course in the desert or the mountains and it could have really severe rocks or tall grasses. Those things have changed. You know, golf used to be pretty much in a nice green field and had a few trees planted on it. They would take an old farm and put some greens, push up some greens, push up some tees, and cut some bunkers in the ground. That was it. And maybe if there was a lake, they would use it strategically to challenge the golfer. Today, you know, we've gone from building golf courses from $200,000 to $50 million.
Yeah.
I can remember, and I've built a lot of golf courses. I've either designed or redesigned or co-designed about 35 projects. And, you know, we've done golf courses as low as $1.5 million, and we've done some in California that were $15 million. But there's some today. I just played a golf course in California they spent $50 million on, and it is spectacular. But they just recreated. I mean, it is more spectacular than something you would see at Disney World in landscaping. It is incredible, the water features, the waterfalls, the landscaping. So that has changed tremendously. Equipment has changed. We have longer clubs. We have clubs with less loft. We have golf balls that have a different dimple configuration that allows the ball to fly straighter and higher. We have metals that actually give a little bit that cause a reflection of the ball, or it actually reflexes off the face. We have driving clubs that don't have grooves on them that takes a spin off that allows it to launch farther. Right. And then the balls accommodate any type of curve. And then you have grooves that are sharper and spin the ball and allow it to stop. So guys hit the ball farther and they hit it straighter. And the players conditionally are in better shape. Guys are bigger, stronger, better, and they're smarter. And the game is to the point where they're playing for a lot of money, and people are very serious about their business when it comes to golf. For the average golfer, I think it's been great. They have allowed people to enjoy the game. I think one thing we have to be real concerned about and careful about is not building golf courses too tough. This is a recreational sport for the average player, and it should be fun. And when a person goes out there and loses 10 golf balls and he spends 6 hours beating it around and shoots 105, that's not fun. And I think it's challenging, but I think a lot of the designers and the people in the leadership into golf have got to be careful at how they treat the golf courses themselves. Equipment, I don't think it makes any difference. What happens in the game with equipment, you know, the USGA and the PGA Tour are continually trying to hold back equipment changes that are for the betterment of the game. But the reality of it is, and Trevino said this to me, he says, I don't care if you give me a hickory nut and a stick and get out here in this parking lot. If we all have hickory nuts and sticks, I'm going to beat you. Right. He just believed he was better. So golfers with the most talent are always going to play well. Tiger Woods is still going to play well. If you went out there and hit it with a tennis racket, he's going to beat everybody in the field because he's the best player in the game.
You were talking about, you said, I believe I'm going to beat you. How much of the game of golf is between the years?
Well, when you get to the level of where I was, I would say 95% of it. All of the guys have great talents. They have hand-eye coordination that's exceptional, and they have desires and wanting to win. But whether you can handle adversity, you know, that's the hardest thing, is learning how to accept losing. When you play golf, you lose all the time. And again, Tiger Woods is the greatest player that ever played the game, barring Jack Nicklaus's record, and he's about to eclipse that. But and Jack still is the greatest player that has played. Don't let me misstate that. But Tiger probably has the opportunity to be the greatest player, and he's winning 1 out of every 3 times. He's still losing twice. The average player will play 50 or 100 tournaments and not win. So it's very difficult to win. So you have to be a perfectionist. You have to have a lot of self motivation. You have to believe that you're going to win, and you have to not give up, and you have to, I mean, tenacity is the word to describe to be successful playing. And it takes it right here to have the tenacity. It's like fighting a war out there between you and the elements, you and the golf course. You don't worry about the other competitors. It's you and your equipment, you and your physical conditioning. There's a lot of between you and the game as you play. So you have to be tough enough to handle yourself. And normally you are your biggest critic.
Right. So you got to keep that positive attitude and positive focus. We're getting a little bit short on time, but give me kind of a summation of what you think from an economic standpoint where the game of golf is today. How healthy
Well,
is
golf is the strongest it's ever been. I think golf is slacking at some point right now because of our economy. The economy is lagging because of real estate and banking, and golf has been driven by the financial sector and also real estate. And so it all is sort of a triangle there. But golf is such a great game. It's a game you can play for a lifetime. I think you're going to see it continually grow, and people are going to want to pursue excellence no matter how the economy is. But it does have an effect on our game today.
What's Jerry Pate up to in the future?
Oh, still working, working hard. I've got several businesses I have been involved with all the years that I didn't play. I built a few golf courses and got into distribution business and have a nice little company here in Pensacola and with Toro and Echo and Club Car and a lot of other products related to the green industry. And we're just growing our business and trying to take care of my kids and my grandkids. I don't think your kids ever leave home. They just bring their kids over.
And you're going to continue to play some on the Champions Tour?
I am. In fact, I'm going out to play the AT&T Pebble Beach this year, which is a PGA Tour event, and then I'll play probably 15 to 20 Champion Tour events and see how I do. I still struggle with my health. Once you've had that many surgeries, it's a constant battle. I still have to rehab every day and have to practice to sort of work around my strength in my shoulder once you've had that sort of traumatic injury. But, I love it. It's my passion. I still love to play.
I've got about 1 minute, just give me a quick answer on this, but taking the injury quotient out of it, do you enjoy playing more now or before?
It's interesting. I love striking the ball now more than I ever have because I feel like I've learned my swing better. I understand the biomechanics of the body and the golf swing, and that's through Jim Andrews, Kevin Wilk, and all the trial and error of the surgeries and as I believe in life, every negative has a positive. I've learned a lot and did a lot of things because of my losses and my failures, and I just look forward to continually enjoying this game.
Well, we wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks.
Thanks for spending some time with us.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
Professional golfer Jerry Pate on this edition of Conversations. We certainly appreciate you watching. Take good care of yourself. I'm Jeff Weeks, and we'll see you soon. We'd love to hear from you. Check us out on Facebook. Search Conversations with Jeff Weeks.